With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
This is Rob Long with Martini Shot for The Ankler. It doesn't really matter how old you are, does it? When Labor Day rolls around, it just feels like back to school, even if school is many years away. It's a long-standing tidal urge, I guess, when September hits, to buy some pens and a new backpack and a Trapper Keeper binder with Mork from Ork on it. Though, perhaps I've said too much. Although, for the record, I never had one of those binders, not because I was too cool for school, but because I wasn't nearly that organized. There was no real trapping or keeping during my school years, just a lot of spiral-bound notebooks with papers cascading everywhere. And in show business, it's not really back to school, but back to business. August is spent mostly pushing and postponing things until our three favorite words, after the holiday, come true. And it is after the holiday, and we are now facing all the meetings and decisions and conversations we've happily put off. September is when all of those bills come due. For me, though, it really is back to school. I am, in fact, back in school, and this week I'm back to being back in school, just like the old days. I'm starting my second year in the Master of Divinity program at Princeton Theological Seminary. I've talked about it before, and the only reason I'm specifying it all again is because I have discovered that a lot of people just didn't believe me when I told them that I was going back to school to get an MDiv and on the path to ordination in the Episcopal Church, inshallah, as we Episcopalians say. But before any of that happens, and before I achieve a longtime goal of pitching a half-hour multi-camera comedy to a network while wearing my priest's collar, talk about bringing gravity to the ritual of TV show pitching. But before any of that, I need to get a degree. And that means I need to go back to school. And that means I am going to be the oldest person in the classroom, not just the oldest student either. I am older than many, if not most, of my professors. And for about 3 weeks at the start of school last year, I felt really weird about it. And then I just settled into the awkwardness, the way you do, I guess. The whole point of getting older, anyway, is discovering fearlessness as a superpower. I mean, a lot of great and some terrible things have happened to me already. I already know the basic gist of what life hands to you, so there's nothing really to be awkward or fearful or embarrassed about. I mean, I casually mention psychedelics in class conversations. I tell stories about show business, and I connect them to moments in the letters of Paul. I have referred to Moses as the showrunner of Exodus. And in general, I just let it all hang out. I mean, why not? Once I was with some classmates taking a tour of a museum, and the museum guide was explaining something about a certain piece of Byzantine art. And she said, I'm sure your professor knows all about this. And she gestured to me because I am old and I guess professorial, despite the fact that the actual professor of the class was standing there too, but she looks like a student with a backpack. And in general, though, it's probably good mental hygiene just to be a person my age with my background, back in school, back to school, a little bit humbling, a little bit validating, often really funny. And I have to confess, I am a much better student now than I ever was. Something about wanting to be in a place, wanting to actually learn as opposed to simply collecting a credential, which was unfortunately what I did for most of my school days. So back to school for me is a very literal phrase, but it's probably a good way for a lot of us, especially those of us in show business, to think or rethink or relearn something. Last week I read a bunch of articles about how much difficulty Disney is having reaching young male audiences. Apparently the owner of Lucasfilm and Marvel, along with a lot of other properties, is having trouble connecting to males 13 to 28-ish. As my friend Dave Burge put it on Twitter, if only there was some way for Hollywood to crack the code on the eternal sphinx-like mystery of what subject matter appeals to 17-year-old boys. Now, for most of my career, in fact, people have complained that Hollywood is only capable of appealing to teenage and teenage-adjacent males. They were said to own the summer box office. They were said to be the singular interest and obsession for movie studios. The only thing that everyone seemed to agree on, actually, for better or worse, was that show business had a lock on the attentions of teenage males. Now, apparently, not so much. Now they're an unreachable, baffling audience, which is sort of emblematic of the problems that beset Hollywood today. They've forgotten how to do the easy stuff. Dave posted a follow-up to his post about Disney's inability to decode the unfathomable teenage male audience, which was a meme of a pro wrestler strutting into the arena with the caption, "Me, strolling into Disney HQ with my completed screenplay for Tits Force 8, Operation Car Crash." And he added, "It runs 7 pages." I had dinner once with a high-up executive at Ford Motors, and I asked him why they kept redesigning the Ford Mustang when the old classic ones are hugely popular. Why not just make some of those, I asked. He gave me a lot of probably sound reasons why that would be a bad idea, and I say probably because I wasn't really listening. But one point did cut through, because he said they would have to re-engineer everything. They didn't have all of the specs, apparently. The machines were tooled differently now. They just forgot to remember how to make a hugely popular car because they were so busy changing it. So what do you do when you need to relearn something? You go back to school, obviously. So that's what show business should do. Go back to school, back to class, back to a core curriculum that includes every installment of the Porky's franchise, which, let's be honest, is not too far from Dave Burge's screenplay when you think about it. Add in, I don't know, Kentucky Fried Movie, Caddyshack, something from the Adam Sandler corpus. I remember one summer evening, my brother coming home from a movie, and he could barely tell me about it because he was laughing so hard. But he managed to tell me every single great joke from that movie, and soon I was laughing hard, too, at his retelling of the movie. And then the next day, we went to see it. Him for the second time, me after hearing all the jokes the night before, and we laughed even harder. That movie was Airplane. And my idea of hell, by the way, is having to pitch that movie to anyone in show business today. Back to school. On TikTok, there are these bizarre narrative tales, some directly from Reddit, some clearly written by AI in 5 or 6 parts that tell some convoluted revenge story about greedy family members trying to steal money or otherwise manipulate each other. And they're terrible, and they're clearly fake and basically identical. Usually there's a family meeting, and the one person in the family with a job and a responsible attitude is on the receiving end of some grasping family cabal, and there's always a pretty satisfying revenge story that unfolds. Weddings are canceled, false wills are revealed, credit cards are canceled. They're all just awful, and I'm addicted to them. I throw in a few of those in the curriculum just to show how something cheap can really work, and that the simplest things, just, good guys and bad guys, they're almost always moneymakers. I'd add Taken and High Noon, one good guy, a bunch of bad guys, not so different from Reacher, I guess. And the bad guys are also ridiculously over the top, drinking fine whiskey and arching an eyebrow. In the movie Taken, which I enjoyed, full disclosure, there's one of the worst pieces of dialogue in any movie ever. Liam Neeson is all, tied up, and the evil villain looks bored in his black tie, and he tells his henchmen, "Kill him, but do it quietly. I have guests." That's terrible dialogue. Great movie. All the bad guys die. And a lot of clever people in show business will roll their eyes, but to them I say, go back to school. There is an old saying, not sure exactly from where, but it goes sort of like this. If you want to learn something about yourself, just try to relearn something you already know how to do. You'll discover 2 things. 1, that you really do know how to do this thing. And 2, that you really don't know how to do this thing. Or maybe that you just forgot what you already know. So back to school for show business, where they can learn what they already know how to do. And that, I think, more than any mergers and acquisitions that come out of Sun Valley, more than stock buybacks or platform consolidation or new IP, that will put Hollywood back in business. Back to school. Just like me. I mean, in a way, I guess, I'm sort of the Rodney Dangerfield of Princeton Theological Seminary. And that, by the way, is a reference to another movie that should be in the curriculum. And that's it for this week. Next week, some industry slang. For The Ankler, this is Rob Long with Martini Shot.
The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power and advanced Audi tech, the next chapter of Audi is here.